Imagine dropping hundreds of dollars on a custom Italian leather-bound heirloom.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Right. You wait months for this thing. You anticipate, like, the sheer tactile weight of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it finally arrives on your doorstep. Pull it out of the protective slipcase. You try to open to chapter 1.
And you literally can't.
Exactly. The pages are physically welded shut by solid gold metal.
Just fused together.
Yeah. You literally have to rip the paper to read the text. Total disaster. So today we're diving into this catastrophic manufacturing collision.
A collision that forced one of the biggest fantasy publishers on Earth to completely halt their global operations.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this for you because the stakes here are astronomically high.
They really are.
We're looking at Brandon Sanderson's publishing company, Dragonsteel, and they're currently producing the incredibly anticipated premium leather-bound edition of The Eye of the World.
Right, the first book in the massive Wheel of Time series.
Yeah, and people have paid top dollar. The anticipation is just at a fever pitch.
Oh yeah, the fans have been waiting for this.
But suddenly, production is completely frozen. I mean, they slam the brakes.
Yeah, and the crisis we're examining today, it isn't just a story about, like, a delayed shipment or a lost tracking number.
No, not at all.
It's a real-time autopsy of what happens when the relentless binary expectation of modern mass manufacturing crashes headfirst into, well, the unpredictable, porous reality of organic animal skin.
Right. System failure on a massive scale.
Exactly. And to understand the sheer scale of the breakdown, we're relying on this incredibly detailed forensic analysis provided by a specific source.
Yeah, let's talk about the source.
It's a video transcript from John Delaro's, and he's dissecting the crisis from a very unique vantage point.
Because he's not just a guy reading an email, right?
Right. I mean, he's a sci-fi and fantasy author, but more importantly for this scenario, he actually creates and collects these exact types of custom leather-bound books.
Oh, wow. So he really knows the hands-on process.
He does. And he's looking at this alarming update email that Dragonsteel sent to his customers. And he's basically translating all that polite corporate PR language into the grim reality of the factory floor.
Right. Because you might be wondering why a simple customer update email warrants this level of forensic breakdown.
Yeah, why do a whole deep dive on an email?
Exact. But we want to give you an aha moment today about the physical objects you probably just take for granted sitting on your bookshelf right now.
Because to truly understand the artisanal craft of bookbinding, you actually have to look at the exact moment the craft failed.
Yeah, you learn so much when things break. So let's start with the inciting incident.
The email.
Right. Dragonsteel sends out an email to thousands of eager customers stating they're pausing fulfillment due to, and I'm quoting the exact corporate phrasing here, higher than normal reports of manufacturer defects.
Higher than normal, right.
Yeah, in the first batch of these leather-bound books.
And you know, the language of that email is just a masterclass in crisis management psychology.
Oh, totally.
They use the phrase, unanticipated delay.
Unanticipated delay sounds so gentle.
Exactly. When you read a phrase like that, your brain naturally pictures, like, a minor logistical hiccup.
Right, like a pallet got left on a loading dock somewhere.
Or a truck broke down on the interstate.
Right.
Something routine.
But John Delaro's, drawing on his knowledge of the production timeline, points out a massive discrepancy here.
Yeah, between the tone of the email and the reality of the timeline.
Because these books were supposed to start shipping to customers a month prior.
Right. And a few actually did start going out.
Yeah, but then everything just stopped.
Just completely halted.
They actively halted the global fulfillment operation 2 to 3 weeks before this email even hit customers' inbox.
Wait, weeks before?
Yeah. So for almost a month, there's just dead silence while executives are likely panicking behind the scenes.
Oh, wow. So they knew about it way before they said anything.
Exactly. The email makes it sound like, oh, we hit a little speed bump yesterday. Please bear with us.
Right, right.
But the timeline reveals they were sitting on a halted assembly line for weeks, trying to figure out how to put out a massive fire.
And Delaro's highlights a crucial reality of physical manufacturing that really exposes the severity of this pause.
That's that.
Well, in any massive run of physical good, a baseline level of defects is completely baked into the business.
Oh, sure. You always have a few dubs.
Exactly. You expect a certain percentage of, like, dinged corners, misprinted pages, or scratched covers.
Right. It's unavoidable.
And when a customer reports one of those, the customer service team just pulls a fresh unit off the shelf, ships it out as a replacement, and you write off the damaged unit as the cost of doing business.
You don't panic.
Right. You absolutely do not halt an entire global fulfillment apparatus for a few random things.
So what does this all mean? Like, if you stop the presses and freeze shipments worldwide, it's vastly bigger than just a smudge on the cover.
Oh, definitely.
It's like an airline sending out a press release saying they found a minor cosmetic issue with a logo paint job on one plane, but then subsequently grounding the entire global fleet of aircraft.
That's a great analogy. The action entirely contradicts the soothing language.
Exactly. The issue has to be structured.
And if we look at the scale of Dragon Steel's operation, the financial implications of a structural failure here are just staggering.
Because Sanderson's reach is huge.
Right. It's legendary in the modern publishing industry. His mailing list and direct-to-consumer sales are massive.
Right. This isn't a small boutique press printing a run of 50 copies for local collectors.
No, this is an industrial-sized order of a premium, highly expensive artisanal product.
So the financial risk is enormous.
Absolutely. Delaros bluntly notes that a botched order of this sheer magnitude could literally cause a bookbinder to go under completely.
Bankrupt them.
Wow. Yeah, so that puts the polite, assuring tone of the email into a completely different context.
It's a veneer over intense financial anxiety.
Precisely. And the email attempts to soften the blow by leaning heavily into the nature of the raw materials.
Right, I noticed that. They tell the customers, due to the artisanal nature of Leatherbound edition book, the texture of the leather is perfectly normal for there to be slight imperfections.
Right.
They're essentially trying to prime the buyer to accept a certain level of roughness, framing it as, like, character.
Which is scientifically and historically true, to be fair.
Sure.
Leather is not a synthetic polymer extruded from a 3D printer. It is biological skin.
Yeah, it came from a cow, or, well, an animal.
Right. And it carries the history of the animal. It has dense patches, loose patches, pores, hair follicles, grain variations, and scars.
And the email tries to leverage that biological reality, right? Framing these variations as perfectly natural artifacts of an ideal leather-bound book.
Yeah, they claim that these imperfections guarantee that no two copies will ever be perfectly alike, which sounds great on paper.
It sounds romantic, but then the email executes a hard pivot.
Ah.
Exactly. They drop the however. They state, however, the individual reports we received are beyond what we would reasonably be expected and caused us to temporarily pause production.
Right.
So they go from waxing poetic about the beautiful, imperfect nature of artisanal good to admitting, effectively, that the entire first batch is fundamentally ruined.
Yeah, they cross the invisible line between biological character and catastrophic mechanical failure.
So what does that failure actually look like?
Well, to truly understand what crossed that line, we need to look at why John Delaros is uniquely equipped to decode this failure.
Yeah, because you might be wondering why we're trusting this specific creator to guide us through a crisis involving Brandon Sanderson's epic fantasy universe.
Right, he's not just some random guy.
Right. If you look at Delaros's background, he isn't just a disgruntled fan who is annoyed his package.
No, not at all.
He possesses the exact technical vocabulary required to diagnose specific factory disaster.
Exactly. He operates at this really interesting intersection of consumer and producer.
Okay, tell me about the consumer side first.
So on the consumer side, he is a high-end collector himself. In his breakdown, he references his own extensive Tolkien library, which is composed of Easton Press editions.
Oh, those are beautiful. Really high quality.
Very high quality.
Mm-hmm.
And he physically demonstrates the standard of quality in his video by holding up another premium book, Vox Day's A Throne of Bones, Volume 1.
Why that specific book?
Well, he specifically points out its intricate gilding and the complex interplay of dark and light art on the physical object itself.
Right. So he knows what a good book is supposed to look and...
Exactly. He knows the tactile difference between a mass-market hardcover and a multi-$100 heirloom.
But I mean, consuming a product doesn't necessarily mean you know how to build it, right?
That's true.
Like, I can appreciate a fine meal without knowing how to run a Michelin star kitchen.
Fair point, but Delaros actually does run the kitchen in this scenario.
He produces his own book.
Yes. He produces his own custom leather-bound book. He explicitly details his work within his sci-fi and fantasy universe, the Terran Imperium.
Oh, okay.
And for that universe, he successfully produced massive, oversized graphic novels bound in real Italian leather.
Graphic novels? Wait.
Yeah, and he's also currently planning a Flying Sparks omnibus utilizing the exact same premium format.
But wait, does the fact that he makes oversized Italian leather comic books actually translate to the engineering problems of binding a massive, text-heavy, epic fantasy novel like a Wheel of Time book?
I mean, they seem different.
Yeah. Sequential art and, like, 1,000-page prose novels seem like completely different beasts.
The narrative content is different, sure, but the physical mechanics of the artisanal binding game are entirely universal.
What do you mean?
Well, the raw materials do not care what story is printed on the pages inside them.
Ooh, Right.
Whether you're attempting to bind a stack of glossy comic pages or a massive brick of dense text paper, the fundamental physics and chemistry of manipulating real Italian leather remain identical.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The Italian leather still has the same stretch coefficient. It still takes dye the same way.
Exactly.
And it still reacts to humidity and heat regardless of the genre it's wrapping.
Precise. And working with this material at scale is just a logistical nightmare.
Really? Is it so?
You have to understand the specific pressure tolerances for stamp. You have to know how adhesives interact with the porous underside of the skin.
Which is probably really unpredictable.
It is. And you have to figure out how to source dyed lot that maintain color consistency across thousands of units.
Wow.
Because Delarosa's books are printed to order and are, in his own words, extremely expensive to make, his perspective radically shifts how we read this dragon steel crisis.
We're getting an insider's view.
Yeah. We're getting a forensic analysis from a peer who has been in the exact same manufacturing crunch.
So when Delarose reads the phrase unanticipated delays, his brain doesn't think about shipping.
No, not for a second.
His brain immediately visualizes the factory floor. He knows that someone, somewhere in the chain, messed up a die cast.
Or miscalculated the application of wet foil.
Right. Or failed to account for the porosity of a new batch of dyed leather.
Which naturally leads us to the core of the problem.
Right, the breakdown itself.
Yeah, because to understand how something breaks, you first have to understand how it's supposed to be built. We need to dissect the anatomy of the object itself.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Most of us inherently view a book as a singular, unified object.
Right, you buy it at a store, it feels solid.
Yeah, it seems like it was born in a factory as one complete entity.
But it's not.
No.
Yeah.
Del Arroz's breakdown reveals that a premium leather-bound book is actually a complex, highly vulnerable hybrid. It is not created in one place.
And that separation of labor is the first massive point of vulnerability.
How so?
A book is essentially two distinct products forced into a marriage. You have the book block, which is the physical stack of printed pages containing the text and the interior art. That block is manufactured completely independently from the leather cover.
So the massive industrial printing presses that rapidly stamp the ink onto the paper are entirely separated from the delicate, organic work.
They're often in completely different states.
Wait, really? Different states?
Oh, yeah. The printer manufactures thousands of heavy paper blocks. Those blocks are then loaded onto pallets and physically transported across the country to a specialized bindery.
That seems really inefficient.
It's just a reality of specialization. And the bottleneck here is incredibly tight. According to Delarose, there are only 2 binderies in the entire world capable of executing this specific type of high-end, mass-scale leather work.
2 facilities on the planet.
That's it.
And the one executing this massive dragon steel order happens to be located in Nashville, Tennessee.
Right. So imagine the logistical tightrope of coordinating thousands of pristine paper blocks arriving at the exact moment a massive batch of Italian leather is ready to be stretched and stamped.
It's daunting, just the schedule.
It really is. But let's focus on the engineering of that paper block for a moment, because the method of construction directly impacts the final binding.
Okay, the engineering. Let's get into it.
Del Arroz highlights a critical architectural choice here: glued bindings versus sewn bindings.
Anyone who has ever owned a cheap mass marker back knows the trauma of a glued binding failing.
It's the worst.
You get to the climax of the story, you open the book a little too wide, you hear that terrible, dry, cracking sound down the
And suddenly a chunk of pages detaches and flutters to the floor.
Exact. It's devastating.
That is known as a perfect, where a layer of synthetic glue is the only thing anchoring the individual pages to the spine.
It's cheap and fast, right?
Very cheap, very fast, and entirely unsuited for a premium object.
Yeah. I would be furious if my hundreds of dollars book fell apart like that.
Del Arroz points out that when dealing with an object as massive as an Eye of the World edition, and we are talking about a dense, incredibly heavy tome, you absolutely must utilize a sewn binding.
Because it's so heavy.
Exactly. You have to physically sew the pages together in small groupings, which are called signatures.
Signatures.
And then you sew those grooves to each other. The thread takes the mechanical stress of opening and closing the book rather than relying on brittle glue.
Okay, so if you view the book as an architectural structure, the pages are your load-bearing walls.
That's a great way to look at it.
Smith sewing provides the tensile strength necessary to keep those walls from collapsing under their own gravitational weight.
Precisely. But here is the critical engineering hurdle. How do you safely and permanently attach a massive, heavy, shifting block of sewn paper to a flexible piece of stretched animal skin.
Oh, right, because they're fundamental materials.
Right, and this is where we have to reevaluate the anatomy of the book. Think of the end paper.
End papers. Most of us know end papers are where fantasy publishers put those beautiful, sprawling, full-color map illustrations.
Yeah, everybody loves the maps.
We treat them like decorative wallpaper for the inside cover.
But from a purely architectural standpoint, their aesthetic purpose is a Trojan horse.
Wait, really? What do they actually do?
Their actual job is intense load-bearing structural integrity.
Seriously?
Yeah. Delaros details how these end papers function as the vital bridge between the two separate manufacturing processes we just talked about.
Okay, break that down for me.
So the Italian leather is stretched tightly across the rigid outer board. The excess leather is folded over the inner edges of the board.
Right, like wrapping a present.
Exactly. Then, the end paper is heavily pasted down, covering the raw edges of the folded leather, effectively locking the skin in place.
Oh, I see.
But simultaneously, the other half of that same end paper is structurally integrated into the sewn book block.
So it connects the two. Think of the end papers like the ligaments in your knee.
Yes.
The rigid leather cover is the femur, and the heavy 1,000-page sewn book block is the tibia.
Perfect analogy.
Without those thick end papers acting as a high-tension ligament gluing the two disparate pieces together, the sheer gravitational weight of the paper block would literally rip the leather right off the spine the first time you held the air.
It absolutely would. It is a delicate, unforgiving marriage of materials.
And this happens thousands of times on the assembly line.
Right. You have thousands of structurally sound paper blocks arriving in Nashville, waiting to be bonded to thousands of uniquely flawed biological skins.
This logistical intersection is where the potential for catastrophe is highest.
It really is. And it
Automatically.
perfectly sets the stage for the specific severe defects that triggered this global pause.
Because we have the internal foundation, the sewn book block.
Yes.
We have the external structure, the stretched Italian leather.
Right.
Now we have to look at the decoration.
This is where things went wrong.
The collision of organic nature and industrial metal. This is the exact point where the artisanal dream devolved into a chemical nightmare. Let's talk about the gold foil stamp.
Yeah. Delaros breaks down the stamping process
Yeah.
with fascinating, terrifying clarity.
Terrifying.
Well, from a manufacturing perspective, absolutely. We have to keep returning to the baseline reality. Leather is a biological sponge.
A sponge, right?
And for this specific Wheel of Time project, the leather is dyed. Delaros mentions these specific colored dyed lots showing up at the Nashville bind.
Probably deep blues or purples to match the series aesthetic.
Most likely, yeah. So the bindery has a palette of blue, porous animal skin.
Okay.
And the design calls for a beautiful, incredibly intricate, razor-sharp gold designed to be stamped onto the cover.
Right. So how do they normally do that?
The traditional method involves a heavy die-cast metal stamp and the application of gold foil.
Simple enough.
But here is the critical, highly volatile detail that Delaros reveals. They are applying wet gold foil.
Wait, like liquid. When I think of foil, I imagine a dry metallic sticker or perhaps a thin sheet of gold bleed gently rub onto.
Yeah, most people do. But wet foil implies a liquid state, and it is an incredibly volatile chemical and physical process.
How does it work?
You're taking a wet metallic slurry, you're applying intense localized heat to activate the adhesives within that slurry,
Okay, heat and liquid.
and you are simultaneously applying immense hydraulic pressure via heavy metal stamp to force that liquid metal into the designated design.
Oh, wow.
You're attempting to force a fluid state into an essentially uneven, microscopic terrain.
That sounds impossible to control perfectly.
It's incredibly difficult.
We've been conditioned by modern technology to expect absolute microscopic perfection. Like if a computer draws a vector line on a high-definition screen, we expect a laser to reproduce that line flawlessly on the final product.
Right, but you can't think of it like a laser printer.
Exact. But when you're pressing a wet metallic slurry into a surface that literally grew on a living animal, a surface riddled with microscopic hair follicles, natural oils, uneven grain valleys, and unpredictable density, how can you possibly demand digital perfection?
You can't. You just can't. And that friction between digital expectation and biological reality resulted in the first major catastrophic defect reported.
What was it?
The gold stamping became muddy.
Muddy. Muddy is a deceptively simple word for a complex chemical failure.
It really is.
Yeah.
To understand the muddy effect, you have to visualize the process at a microscopic level.
Okay, paint the picture for me.
Imagine that wet gold metallic slurry trapped under the extreme hydraulic pressure of the heated metal stamp.
Right.
The stamp is trying to confine the liquid to the precise raised lines of the design. But the liquid needs somewhere to go.
Oh, I see.
Because the leather is a porous, uneven biological sponge, the foil doesn't just sit obediently on the surface. It travels.
It bleeds.
Exactly. It bleeds down into the microscopic valleys and grain channels of the skin.
So the heat and pressure essentially turn the foil into a fluid that follows the path of resistance, which in this case is the natural texture of leather itself.
Yes. Del Arroz notes that in any leather stamping process, you have to tolerate a tiny bit of bleed or trickling simply because the surface isn't a flat piece of glass.
Right, you have to accept some imperfection.
But what occurred with this specific batch was a massive, uncontrolled failure. The crisp, intricate line intended by the designer were entirely blown out.
Resulting in a metallic smudge across premium cover.
Yes, but the disaster wasn't confined to the leather covers.
Oh, no, it gets worse.
It gets much worse. The chemical nightmare seeped directly into the pages themselves. The edge gilding failed.
Oh, the shiny gold edges of the paper?
Right. Premium heirlooms traditionally feature edge gild, the application of gold foil to the outer edges of the paper block.
I always thought that was just to look fancy.
Historically, this protected the pages from dust accumulation and moisture. But today, yeah, it is primarily a signifier of extreme luxury. It looks magnificent when the book is resting.
But applying a metallic edge foil to 1,000 individual sheets of paper introduces a massive risk, doesn't it?
Huge risk. Del Arroz points out that if the foil application is not perfectly calibrated, the foil doesn't just coat the edge.
Let me guess. It bleeds.
It bleeds into the micro gaps between the pages. The metallic slurry pushes too far into the paper block.
Oh, no.
The heat activates the adhesive, and suddenly, the gold foil acts as a heavy-duty glue, bonding the individual pages together on a molecular level.
So imagine the visceral horror of the consumer in this scenario.
Oh, it's terrible.
You've waited months, you've invested a significant amount of money, you receive this hefty, imposing, supposedly luxurious tome.
You're so excited.
You reverently attempt to open it to the prologue, and you discover the pages are physically fused together by a solid block.
And you literally cannot open the book without tearing the paper fibers and destroying the object you just bought.
It entirely negates the functional purpose.
It does. Furthermore, Del Arroz mentions reports of the interior art pages sticking together.
Why would the art pages stick? They're on the inside.
He suspects this might be a residual issue originating from the printing process, where the inks on the glossy art inserts hadn't fully cured before. The immense pressure of the binding process forced them together, causing the opposing pages to bond.
Wow. So when you aggregate these failures, muddy, blown-out cover stamps, ruining the aesthetic, pages permanently fused shut by edge gilding and interior art bond, you're no longer dealing with a few cosmetic.
Not at all.
You have manufactured a fundamentally compromised, unusable product.
Exactly. Which brings us to the most fascinating phase of this entire saga.
Oh, right, the intervention.
Yes, we understand the physical and chemical mechanics of the breakdown. Now we get to explore the dramatic corporate response required to fix an artisanal disaster.
This is the Nashville intervention.
Let's talk about it.
According to the Dragonsteel email, the executive team didn't just fire off a strongly worded email to the bindery's customer service department.
No, they didn't.
Isaac Stewart, the vice president of creative development for Dragonsteel, personally boarded a plane and flew across the country to the factory in Nashville.
And this action alone betrays the sheer panic underlying the situation.
Yeah, that's a big move.
You do not dispatch your VP of creative development to walk a factory floor in another time zone unless the remote communication has completely broken down.
And the financial liability is threatening the project's existence.
Precisely. You can't fix a microscopic chemical reaction over a Zoom call.
Right. If a printer jams in your office, you can troubleshoot it over the phone.
Sure.
But if thousands of expensive Italian leather skins are actively rejecting wet gold foil, you have to physically stand over the hydraulic press.
You have to feel the ambient humidity.
Yes. You have to look at the specific dyed lot of leather and watch the failure happen in real time.
Stewart walked the floor, reviewed the entire production pipeline with the bindery team, and attempted to isolate the root causes of the defects.
And what did he find?
Well, the Dragonsteel email states that he returned with great news. They had successfully identified and solved the problem.
Great news. Oh, good.
However, the exact nature of their solution introduces a bizarre corporate paradox.
This is where we really need to parse the corporate double, right?
We do.
Because the proposed fix makes very little sense on the email proudly announces that the most time-consuming step of the resolution is the process of casting completely new die-cast stamps.
And as Del Arroz rightly points out, recasting heavy metal dies is a monumental, months-long undertaking.
It's not like hitting print again.
Not at all. It requires returning to the digital files, redesigning the tolerances, machining new plates of solid metal, and running extensive stress tests to ensure they impart the correct debossing and texture into the leather.
Wait, stop. This is the part that demands intense scrutiny.
Okay.
Dies are made of solid metal. They are machined directly from digital CAD file. But the Dragonsteel email explicitly states, and I am quoting directly here, it's important to note that the previous dies did not cause the reported book defect.
Did not cause.
Right. And they follow that up by saying they're simply having new dies made to aid in the revised stamping process.
The contradiction is glaring, isn't it?
It makes no sense. The tools didn't cause the problem, but we're spending tens of thousands of dollars and delaying the project for months to completely replace the tools.
Right.
If the original metal die was machined perfectly to the digital file, how could it cost months of time and a fortune in capital just to make the exact same metal again?
It wouldn't.
That makes absolutely zero economic sense unless they're secretly changing the fundamental design stamp. It feels like buying a brand new car because your tire pressure.
It really does.
Yeah.
This is the core mystery of the Nashville intervention, and it requires us to separate theoretical engineering from factory floor reality.
Okay, walk me through it.
Let's analyze the phrase "did not cause the defect." In a vacuum, the original dies might have been flawless.
Flawless how?
The metal was cut precisely to the digital specifications provided by the Dragonsteel design team. The lines were sharp, the depth was correct. From a purely digital theoretical standpoint, the die was perfect.
So if I look at the die on a table, it looks exactly like the computer file.
Exactly. But a metal die does not operate in a vacuum.
Right.
It operates within a highly specific, volatile ecosystem. It exists in constant relation to the hydraulic pressure of the bindery's massive machines,
The temperature.
the ambient temperature, the specific chemical viscosity of the wet gold foil, and, most crucially, the unique, unpredictable organic elasticity and porosity of that specific dyed lot of blue Italian leather.
Ah. Okay, I'm tracking now. So the stamp was perfectly engineered for a theoretical digital world, but it was entirely incompatible with the biological reality of the materials they were actually using.
That is the most logical forensic deduction. Consider the microscopic reality we discussed earlier.
With the bleeding lines.
Right. Perhaps the lines on the original die were drafted too close together. On a flat piece of synthetic paper, those lines would render crisp.
Because paper doesn't have deep, random pores.
Exactly. But when that same die presses wet metallic slurry into a porous, uneven, oil-rich piece of animal skin under extreme heat, the fluid dynamics change entirely.
The foil has nowhere to displace to.
Right, so it bleeds across the narrow gaps, causing the muddy effect.
So the corporate team can technically claim the dies didn't cause the defect, thereby protecting the integrity of their initial design phase, while simultaneously admitting that the dies are entirely useless for the physical reality of the factory floor.
Yes, they have to redesign the die to account for the fluid dynamics of the leather.
Like giving the foil room to breathe.
Exactly. They might need to widen the gaps between the lines or change the depth of the debossing to give the wet foil room to settle without bleeding.
It's a delicate dance of corporate accounting. They avoid admitting a design failure while executing a massive redesign.
And the cost of this course correction is staggering.
Oh, I bet.
Recasting the dies is only part of the equation. Redoing the die lots, meaning sourcing and coloring an entirely new batch of Italian leather to ensure it reacts correctly to the new dies, means they're essentially starting from zero.
Wait, they have to throw away the old covers?
Oh, yeah. They're taking thousands of the muddy, flawed covers they already produced, tossing them into an industrial dumpster, eating the massive material and labor costs, and beginning the months-long process over again.
That is wild. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most vital question of this entire deep dive.
Let's zoom out.
We've analyzed the microscopic chemistry of wet gold on leather, and we've decoded the corporate PR strategy. Now we must zoom out to the economics of perfection.
Yes, the fundamental question is, why go to all this trouble?
Right. Why is a massive entity like Dragonsteel willing to halt their global operation, dispatch executives across the country, recast incredibly expensive solid metal dies, delay customer fulfillment for months, and incur a massive, painful financial loss just to fix some muddy gold lines on a cover?
It seems extreme, doesn't it?
It does, because in a standard mass manufacturing mindset, you'd quietly ship the slightly flawed product, hope the majority of customers don't notice or care, and offer a small discount to the few laying loudly enough.
That's how it usually.
It happens every day with consumer electronics and fast fashion, but Deleros, despite being the one to ruthlessly diagnose this massive systemic failure, actually praises Dragonsteel's extreme course of action.
He does. And he praises them because he intimately understands the psychology of the high-end collector.
Explain Explain that to me.
You have to analyze what the product actually is. The individuals dropping hundreds of dollars on this specific leather-bound edition of The Eye of the World are not buying it to consume the text for the first time.
No, absolutely not. If you just want to find out what happens to Rand, Matt, and Perrin, you go online and buy an $8 mass market paperback.
Or you download the ebook in.
Right. The people buying this edition likely already own 3 different iterations of the exact same novel. They have the hardcovers, the backs, the audiobooks.
Therefore, they are not purchasing the narrative. They're purchasing a physical artifact.
An heirloom.
Yes, they are buying a tactile, heavy heirloom manifestation of their deep emotional connection to the Wheel of Time universe. The story is secondary to the object itself.
That makes total sense.
The physical perfection, the craftsmanship, the flawless gold gilding, the smell of the Italian leather, that is the entire product.
So if the artifact is flawed, if the gold is muddy and the pages are welded shut, the purchase is entirely meaningless. The illusion of the heirloom is shut.
Exactly. Dragonsteel fundamentally understands this economic reality. Del Aros understands this.
It's all about trust, isn't it?
It is. The massive mailing list we discussed earlier, the engine of Dragonsteel's independence in the publishing world, is built entirely on trust.
Right. If Dragonsteel knowingly shipped thousands of premium books with muddy stamping and fused pages, they wouldn't just face a wave of returns.
They would permanently destroy the trust of their most dedicated, highest-paying demographic.
Wow. So they are willingly absorbing a massive, painful financial hit to ensure the final product meets the standard, because the alternative shipping, a compromised premium artifact, is literal brand suicide in the highly insular artisan.
It really is. It's an incredibly fascinating look at the value of accountability in a world that usually prioritizes speed over
Think about the items you truly value, The things you invest real money in. When the inevitable manufacturing failure happens, how do you want the company to respond?
That's a real question.
Do you want the fast, quietly flawed version? Do you want them to ship you something mediocre and rely on your app?
Most people would say no.
Right. Or do you want them to publicly stop the presses, admit the failure, absorb the financial liability, and fundamentally re-engineer the process, even if it forces you to wait several more months?
I think the answer is clear for these kinds.
It is a remarkable journey we've tracked today. We started by dissecting a deceptively polite email apologizing for an unanticipated delay, and we translated that into a global factory halting crisis.
And we leaned on John Del Aros's specific expertise in binding oversized Italian leather graphic novels to understand the hidden structural anatomy of a book.
Which was fascinating, how a heavy Smith-sewn paper block must be married to a flexible animal skin using high-tension end papers.
Right. We zoomed in on the volatile microscopic chemistry of applying wet gold metallic slurry to porous, uneven dyed leather.
Observing how that violent clash of industrial heat and biological reality resulted in blown-out cover art and permanent...
And we tracked an executive's desperate flight to a bindery in Nashville to solve the mystery of theoretically perfect digital dyes that completely failed against the fluid dynamics of reality.
What this entire forensic breakdown proves to me is something surprisingly profound about our modern world. We possess incredible, almost magical mass manufacturing technology.
We do.
We can utilize lasers, robotics, and algorithms to print millions of words flawlessly in seconds. But when we desire true premium quality, when we want to create a lasting artifact, we are still entirely at the mercy of the unpredictable, messy, volatile intersection of human hands and organic material.
You cannot write a software algorithm to automate the unique grain of a piece of Italian leather.
Right.
You cannot force a biological organism to conform to a perfect digital grid.
Which leaves you with something to ponder the next time you pick up a book, crack open the spine, and feel the weight of the paper.
It really changes how you look at a book on your shelf.
We started today by talking about the comforting expectation of machine precision, the assumption that a laser will execute flawlessly every time. But if our modern manufacturing capabilities are truly so advanced, why do the most valuable, most intensely cherished objects in our society still fundamentally rely on the unpredictable, frustrating variation?
Great question.
Is flawless perfection